This is Jennifer Miller interviewing Bert Austin at his home in Hatteras Village on February 22nd, 2003, tape 1. Okay. Now, Mr. Austin, I had read the article that they did about you in the Island Breeze, and it says there that your parents were Ernest and Kate Austin.
That's correct.
Is that correct? And now, and your mother's mother was Minnie Harrell?
Correct.
And did you know your mother's father?
No, he had passed away before they moved here from Perquimans County.
Okay.
My grandmother and mother moved here from Perquimans County when my mother was 8 years old.
Oh, okay.
And I have one other relative on her side that I know who lives in Frisco, which is Mildred Poole.
Oh.
And she'll be 90 years old next month.
Yes, I heard about her. And your father's parents, did you know them?
No, I knew my grandfather. They lived right over here, but my grandmother had passed. I might have passed on after I was born, but I just don't recall her at all. She was full-blooded Cherokee Indian.
Oh. And how did she end up here? Do you know that?
I guess she had lived here as part of the growing up, you know, the families that. And I'm not sure just what her. There's a whole lot of these things that, unfortunately, I'm not up on like I should be. My sister, who passed away 2 years ago, could have told you anything you wanted to know. But I'm looking in here to show you an article that was written by one of my cousins that spoke about my grandmother and so forth. Of course, I'll never find it when I'm looking for it.
What book are you looking at?
One that my sister, one of my cousins wrote about herself.
Confessions of an Outer Banks Filly.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I've seen that in some of the bookstores around here.
Yeah, she gave me this at my retirement social.
Oh.
Well, it really breaks down a lot of good information about the family that, you know, that a lot of us are, tells us where the family came from. It goes back way back.
Yeah.
Way back.
And who wrote that? Your cousin? What was her name?
Sybil.
Sybil, okay. Sybil Austin? I didn't see that when you held the cover up there.
Well, she's a Shackle.
Okay.
And she was an Austin, though. She was married. Okay, I'm looking to try to find that information to read to you.
I just thought that was interesting that your grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee.
Well, this is what she says in here, and I'm not going to go into that because I don't really know that to be factual.
Sure.
But it's certainly in here that she stated that. Mojana Oden, born May 13, 1864, wife of William Wheeler, had 3 sisters, and it tells about her family. And there's somewhere in here she talks about Grandma, actually she was talking about one of my uncles, and about his high cheekbones, and mentioned the fact that she was full-blooded Cherokee. I can't. Usually, as usual, I can't find it.
That's fine. That's no problem.
Go ahead and be talking to me. And
sure. Let me see here. Well, do you know what any of your grandparents did for a living? I know Miss Minnie was a postmistress.
Yes,
in the article.
Yeah, she was postmistress, and her husband, she married Dave Edward Fulcher, who ran a small store in Frisco, and that was about all I could go back and really tell you. I don't.
Sure. Well, that's fine. And your mother, she was a school teacher.
Yes, she graduated from the old ECTC, East Carolina Teachers College.
Oh, okay.
And she taught for a number of years, and then she raised 5 of us, as well as, I guess, all of us, as we came along, you know, we'd go on our own ways. 2 of my brothers left early, and one sister left and went to Virginia. And then Minnie Burris, who married William Burris, that owned the Red and White. And, of course, Minnie passed away 2 years in April. So anyway, it's I went to service upon retiring. I kept retiring as I get out of school. And as far as I can tell you, that's pretty much all the background in the family that I'm that up to date with.
Sure. The article had also talked about but when you came back from the service that you had worked on starting up a bank here.
Okay.
You got the ECB started.
That's
And
right.
I was curious about that because I had talked to Daniel and Mildred Willis, and they said that there was a bank here. I think it was Engelhard or something.
Well, that bank is out of the Bank of Engelhard, the old Bank of Engelhard. There's only been one bank here until the East Carolina Bank came, which is now Centura.
Okay.
And that it went back years ago to the old Bank of Matteo, and it was bought out by Planters, and it became Planters, and then it changed to Centura, and so forth. And when I retired from the Air Force, I was president of the Air Force, president of the Hatteras Civic Association. And one of the objects that I was interested in trying to get here was a bank here for the village of Hatteras, because I knew there was a lot of funds available needed to be. So I went out and talked to different members of, the old Planters. They didn't want to put another one, so they had one in Buxton. Talked to the other banks that were in the area, but Nags Head and so forth. And none of them seemed to be too much interested. Well, the East Carolina Bank had just started up there. They had an office in Nags Head, one in Matteo. And maybe a year later, I got a call one day and asked me if I could meet with them, that they were interested in putting a bank in Hatteras Village, and that they would like to talk to me about it. And of course, I was still president of the association, so I went and met with them. And they said yes, they were really interested in doing it. They'd done a survey, et cetera, and was wondering if I would be interested in managing it. And I was working part-time with Sheriff Cahoon as a reserve deputy. And I told him, of course, I said, I don't know a thing about banking except write checks, spend the money, and try to balance my books. Anyway, they offered me the job, and I came back and I talked to Sheriff Cahoon and took the position. And we opened here in Hatteras Village. The trailer, as you're going out of the village on the left, past the Channel Bass, is where we opened.
Oh, okay.
And then I got with them, stayed with them 9 years, and in that 9 years, we went and opened one in Ocracoke, built one in a beautiful bank over there. And I was on them continually about opening in Avon, which came after I left the bank. And Sheriff Coon called me one day and said that he would like me to consider coming on as his chief deputy, and that he was would really, like for me to do it. So we talked salary, and it was more than the bank paid. And so I was out in California to the Rose Bowl game. Or actually the Super Bowl game, the Rose Bowl, and Sheriff Coon made the announcement that I would be coming on as his chief deputy, which I did in 1980, and then was elected for sheriff in 1982 for 5 terms.
Goodness, so 20 straight years of being sheriff. Wow.
Yes, that was a quick overlay.
It sure was. So there hadn't been any bank then previous in Hatteras Village?
No, ma'am. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I think they were considering the bank that was in that Buxton. Been there for years.
That must be what they were talking about.
Yeah.
That clarifies that.
Yes, because there has not been a bank in this village, to my knowledge. And I'm not taking away from Mildred and the bank. Yes, there was a bank, and the old East Carolina Bank was the Bank of Engelhard, which started to grow.
Okay.
And they bought out little banks all around. They bought out different ones here, different ones there, and established themselves. And if I recall now, they've got about 20 or so offices throughout North Carolina.
Oh.
It's a very solid bank. It's a good bank.
Yeah, I think they had said during the Depression.
It never closed its door.
That's right, yes.
I bought stock in it. I wish I bought a lot more. As you well know, stock in a bank doesn't mean anything until they split or sell.
Do you remember anything about the Gooseville Gun Club?
Yes, I do. Some, not a whole lot, because my father managed that for many years prior to his death. And I was named after the owner of that, George Albert Lyon, and they named me Albert Lyon.
And what was that all about? Cause
It was a hunt club.
Okay.
People came from all over. I mean, back in those days, big name people, Nelson Eddy and people like that. If you know who he was. He was a singer, very popular, renowned singer back in those days. But it was a hunt club. Mr. Lyons was in industrial type work out of Detroit, and he built that, and Mr. Stellwagen and many others. I don't recall all their names, but he introduced to the island a lot of your wildfowl that you see here.
Oh.
Pheasants that were taken off and years back and never were put back. They took them somewhere else to try to get them to live, and they didn't live because they just did not make the change. And
he had introduced the wildlife here?
Some of it, not all of it. Well, yeah, well, there was plenty of ducks and geese, but he brought other type here, and he was quite an individual. Did, I think, a wonderful job when he preserved that area down there, and it was all taken over after when they started the park on the property.
So the park took over the property where the hunt club was. Was that in the 40s? I guess.
No, it was after that, because I was in the Air Force when they finally got all that property.
And how long had it been there, the gun club?
A long time. I don't know the exact time, but it was a long time. They continually were building beach up and working with the beaches and things. I don't have any of them now. I don't know where you would find them. There were a lot of old pictures that were taken down in that area showing the area where it had washed out and this, that, and the other. It was quite a hunting club.
And it was right around the area of the marina?
No, right where the Coast Guard, right where the Coast Guard station's sitting. And they took it and used it for a number of years till they built the new one, which was quite interesting. My brother, David, where I was at his party last night, was the first Coast Guard chief in that station, and when the new one, the officer in charge, they call him. But it was, as I say, it was quite interesting. Mr. Lyons was quite an interesting man. I don't, like I said, I was just a kid.
Sure.
And my dad died when I was 3.
Okay.
And I think he was 32 or 34.
Your dad was?
Another raised 5 of us.
And, I guess I was curious as to why he may have died young.
Well, the understanding I have is that he had a brain tumor, and of course back in those days they didn't know too much about those things.
Sure.
His heart beat for 48 hours after they had actually declared him dead. The Coast Guard did mouth-to-mouth resuscitation type stuff, back in those days.
Yeah.
I wish I could find that article in here. It bothers me.
I might have a look at that book. I've seen it around. I'm sure they have it in the library.
And you can drop it back.
Sure, of course.
It's in here. It's somewhere in here. It's just talking about Grandma, about Uncle Andrew, about having high cheekbones. And
I've been very interested about some of the Native American history here, and you don't hear much about that.
There's so much of it that people don't know.
I know. Such a rich heritage, and most of it is kind of lost.
There you go. I found it. Page 32. It is supposed he inherited these features from his grandmother, Sally Ann Folger, a full-blooded American Indian, probably Hatteras or another one. And this would make her my great-grandmother instead of my grandmother. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But take the book anyway and read it. It's very good.
Great. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bring it back to you.
So that makes me somewhere along the way the Cherokee or whatever that other Indian name is there.
Well, the Hatteras were the ones that were native here.
Yes.
Right. That's quite a thing. Well, thank you very much. I will take that and have a look at it. Now, let me see here. Well, could you just tell me some general things about what life was like here while you were growing up as a kid in the 30s and 40s?
Well, I was born in 1931 and came along, and as I was growing up, the island didn't change a whole lot until actually back in the 50s. It started to change considerably. During World War II, I'd been many in the morning. I was born right in this house. All my brothers and sisters were. The house is 84 years old. I've been woken up many mornings as ships were torpedoed, blown out of the water, and watched them burn, and walked on the beach and saw a lot of lifeboats that had been machine gunned, and debris, oil, clumps of oil, and such and so forth. But I left here in 1950 after graduating and was gone for 20 years. And when I left, they were just beginning to put highway in the villages, and it went as far as Avon. But in between that, I used to work with a gentleman who bought produce down. And we'd go to Norfolk and load a big truck and start back with it. And we stayed, I always tell everybody, we're stuck more than we were traveling. But the villages began to grow a little bit more. And while I was gone, it began to take on a different, totally different atmosphere with motels coming in. A lot of the homes were being bought up by people and moving in, you know, and keeping them in for summer homes, etc. But the biggest change came after I became sheriff. It was just like a mushroom. There was 13,000 people in Dare County when I was elected sheriff, and I had 13 deputies, and look at it today.
Sure.
And we're still, and I use the term we because I'm a reserve deputy. Sheriff Midget is still way understaffed, as well as like the Park Service. I don't know how they exist. I'm speaking of their law enforcement because we work with them. We help them a lot, and they help us a lot. But it's just taken off and gone. It's grown, and a lot of it is good, and a lot of it isn't. That's anything in changes in today's world.
Sure.
But we grew our own vegetables around here. My uncle Rupert up in Frisco, Mildred's father, had a garden there. He could grow anything you wanted. I used to go on the Kathleen from over here where my uncle lived, Uncle Fred, down here by the Marlin Club, to Elizabeth City. Had to go there to go to the doctor, or I had my tonsils removed there, and it would take a day and a half.
Wow.
And then you push your way up the beach, or wait for low tide to drive up the surf. It was quite an experience, and I would bring guys home with me from the military, and they were just fascinated with this area. And I had one very close friend from South Carolina. I would come on vacation, and he'd find out I was on vacation, and he'd take vacation, come straight here, then we'd leave here and go back to his home in South Carolina, and all back to our bases, because he loved it. He loved the beaches, and it was so unique.
Yes.
And the vegetation was much thicker then. It was in not all the places, but in so many places, you could hardly get along. And the trees along the roads through here, and of course most of this was taken out when they put in the road. Frisco was beautiful. Buxton was beautiful. And today you can almost look from one end, from sound to sea.
And why do you think that is, if the vegetation has gone up?
Well, they take it out to build these properties.
Sure.
And that has really made a difference. Once they take it out, it kills everything around it, because it opens it up for more weather. And as you know here, with a hard nor'easter or a hard southwester, the salt is in the air so bad that my Buick sits in the garage, and I can go right there right now, and it's probably just covered with salt air, you know, where it just comes through.
Sure. Do you think it's a combination of the storms and the development then? Or?
Development has taken the most of it.
Okay.
It really has. At least that's the way I see it.
Sure. Well, that's what I'm asking. So I had heard some people attribute it more to storms.
But we haven't had, well, now, Emily left here with a bad, a lot of trees broke off and this, that, and the other. But they fill back in most of the places that happens, pines have. But you go in developments all over this island, and you see areas where it's just totally taken out. And I'm not knocking, but most of them, now when they first started, they had no concern. They just dig a ditch here and fill there. But most of them now are really controlling the way it's built and the growth, which I have no problem with that.
That's
I think
good.
it's wonderful.
I think in the article it also said that the development had happened here was not enough planning and control or consultation with the...
That was exactly what I was saying at the beginning. Now it's really, they've got, the county finally woke up and put some rigid controls in. It's just like the building here. Our building codes were so strong after Andrew, they came here from Florida to see, or got building code, whatever, from up here to put in Florida.
Oh, really?
To put more rigid requirements. And you look at these old homes here, this one's 84 years old. It's been through so many hurricanes, it's unbelievable. But it's never left.
Right.
But it could go tomorrow. I mean, you know, it's older now, and then everything goes as we wear down. And I can attest to that.
Around what time did they start to change the building codes to be more
Probably in
accessible?
the late 60s, early 70s, maybe even the 70s and 80s, because it made a big difference. It really did. It had to be probably more in the 70s and 80s, because I was home when it started. I retired in the 70s.
And what events that have happened here do you think were the most catalyst to change? Anything in particular with World War II or the Park Service or?
I think that people just began to find out that they've been fishing here all for many, many hundreds of years, and they just began to take off on that as a starter. And then people would say, hey, this is a nice place. Let's invest a little money here and build a nice home or business. And that started it up. And the park, I'm sure, I never saw a whole lot of activity out in the park when I was growing up. It was just here. It was known as a park. And then they began to take more interest in different things and opening more visual. The lighthouse, for instance, that's always been a big drawing attraction. But it wasn't until the highway came in and people started visiting here, fishing, and then it took off. At least that's the way I feel. And it's been and I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, I saw a lot of my family's properties taken and they weren't given nothing for it. And now I'm certainly glad they did, or we'd be like worse than Bag's Head.
Right.
And I don't want to see that happen this island. I really don't. The park's done a lot of good things here. It really has. The state and the county have done a lot of things here that were way overdue, and still are in a lot of things. But it's like anywhere else, once growth starts, it's going to continue. This is the secret, you know, we're a quiet place, nobody really. So it just takes off. How long have you been here?
About 3 years.
How are you enjoying it?
I sure am. I really am. I love working with Georgia there.
Oh, I love her. Well, Georgia's related to me.
Is she?
Yeah. Her grandmother was in Austin, and
that's right.
And Mr. George, and I can't give you all, as I said, I wish my sister Minnie was alive, but she had all that stuff down. But yeah, her grandmother was related to me. And I love Georgia. She is such a sweet girl.
She sure is.
and what you see is what you get.
That's right. That's what I like about her the most. She doesn't hide things from you.
Well, she's been good friend. She was very supportive of me in all my campaigns, and you know, and of course when she was growing up, we just formed a bond. The whole our family is close. We're spread all over. There's my immediate family is about now probably close to 70. It used to be over that. And then the Austin clan gets together just on Grandpa Wheeler, which you read about here. There's close to 500 to 600 of us.
Oh, wow.
But we're scattered, gosh, I don't even know.
Right. Yeah. All moved far and afield, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember any industries or businesses that were here when you were young that are no longer around, such as seaweed harvesting? I don't know if that was still going on when you were growing up, or
no.
Things of that nature. The
only thing that was here when I was growing up was fishing, and that was commercial. And the fish stocks are still, some of them still in place. And then, like I say, we came and get a lot of people starting to come here to go offshore fishing. The albatross fleet was starting up, and that was about the only ones around for a number of years. Some of the older boats were converting somewhat to go, and that was about it. It really was. The porpoise factory and all that stuff was beyond my time.
Sure.
And the seaweed, that might have happened after I went to service. I don't recall any of that.
I think that may have happened a long time ago. I heard some woman in her 90s told me something about that.
Gosh. I'm 72. But
yeah. This might be a good question for you because a lot of people don't have much to say about it. But one thing that we're interested in anthropological sense is how are the villages different from one another? Well, how are they similar? That's kind of obvious how they're similar, but how do each of the villages, or this village in particular, how is it different from, say, Frisco and Buxton and Avon?
There's just a different attitude with the people. This village has been very pro-active. You may have heard this, you may not. This village had electricity since the 30s.
Yes.
And this village was the one that, when they wanted to get power on the island, this is where it started. We had what was back in those years ago, what we call today Civic Center, Civic Association, was known as a library association or another title. And I know personally that that started there with them to get a power company here. Of course, we had it here in this village, but we wanted to see it for the whole group.
Sure.
Well, we use the term at least from Buxton to Hatteras, because Avon was even farther up the way. And they built a power plant up in Buxton. They wanted water. It started right out here in the Hatteras Fire Department meetings. Then the water company got association that was formed. It went into the Frisco area. And that's this village, and a lot of people may not agree with it, but it's the most progressive village on the island. Always has been. Our civics group has never closed its door. It was under different names, but it's still here.
Has it always been around since the time you were a child?
It was different age style. Back in those days, they didn't call them anything other than a group of people get together and get things to move. And that was the way it was. Morris Burris and other people, Corlett Burris, and my uncle and his boy, Shanklin, Bill Burris, and these are people that were come back from the military, a couple of them. They were very progressive in seeing, well, we need to get these things done. And others, and I just use Mr. Morris as he had the first power company. Actually, it was Tom Eaton, which Mr. Morris worked with, and they had the ice plant.
Okay, I have heard
And Tom Eaton rented this house at one time.
Oh, did he?
Yes. And there's just many things like that, that these were people that had foresight. And they wanted to see things go. And this village was like pretty much a homestead to get it moving.
And so, where were these meetings held? In the church or in their home?
Wherever, yes. Most of the time, we had the first fire department. And that's where most things started to meet. After a couple homes burned, and one Mr. Burris, Ross Burris's home burned, a couple of the Fosters and the Burrises and everybody got together one night, got to have a fire department. So soon that we got a fire department. Our first truck's still sitting down there.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
it
on
worked.
display, isn't it?
Still sits there in the garage.
Yeah.
It worked.
Wow, that's amazing.
But they have answered calls when I've been home while I was in service, all the way to Rodan. The time they got there was all over, but they went.
Around what time was the fire department started here?
If I'm going to tell you, 59, if I'm correct.
Okay, approximately.
That's close.
Okay.
59 or 60.
And how long did it take for the other villages to catch up?
Buxton came next with theirs. I don't remember, but I was in service. And then I think Buxton, then Avon, the Frisco, and then Avon, and then Rodanthe, Salvo, Waves. Rodanthe and Salvo got together, one in, one the other. Waves is the in-between. But I don't recall the exact dates of their formations. But
Sure.
I do know that it didn't take long and the others followed. When they saw the growth was coming and that Hatteras couldn't take care of it all by itself.
What have been the biggest changes recently, maybe even in the time since you've become the sheriff, that have come along? Of course, development, that's an obvious thing, but even in patterns of crime, you would be the prime person to ask about that, but...
There's just, whenever growth comes, crime increases. That's a fact everywhere. I think we've had more, things bought on the island that were needed. The medical center over here in Hatteras was a small hospital, and it was funded by Duke and other endowments that the people here in the village wanted, and we had a doctor, or have had doctors for years, and they got that, and then we've outgrown that. Now you've got this, in Avon, you got doctors all over, but some of the most, I think, better things that have happened is that we have progressed, improving the livelihood of most people here who want to go and improve it. The health standards, the water coming in was one of the greatest things ever was. And things of this nature. A lot of the businesses, what you're talking about, is here, and some of those have brought in other business, restaurants. The only restaurants on the island for a number of years was out here. One in Buxton, which was a real, extremely good place.
What was that called?
Oh, gosh. You're asking me stuff I don't remember.
Oh, that's okay.
It was right there on the corner, where the Seams is now.
Okay.
And I just don't remember,
Oh,
but they have
that's all right.
outstanding food.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've seen more restaurants come in. You've seen theater. There was a theater in Hatteras when I was growing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Shank went off the military and he came back after World War II, it stayed in progress for a number of years. And then it went out, and then another one came in, and you've got 4 in Avon.
Mm-hmm.
Banks. One bank, and that was Planters, and that wasn't here. That came while I was in service.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody buried in the backyards, they will say.
I was going to say, what did they do before the bank?
They went to the post office and got post office money orders or whatever. When we opened the bank in Ocracoke, you would have been amazed. You would have been amazed, the money coming in there.
Mm-hmm.
And people were having bank by mail, and they were just hard. And they kept plenty of cash around different places, and it was quite interesting. It really was. Well, now we've got, 3 banks on the island, and God knows how many ATMs.
That's right.
But the progress has been there, and a lot of it is good. A lot of it is, I just hate to see, a lot of the damage has been done, and we're going to have to work around it.
What type of damage?
Well, to your vegetation.
Yes, of course.
Things, I'm blessed. I've got oaks with moss and pine.
I noticed that on the way. It's beautiful.
Cedars, and I worked real hard to keep this up. In fact, I had Dave Kilmer over the other day trimming my oaks. I got him to go over to this was my uncle's home here. Well, of course, they're all passed away, but their one son is taking care of it's his house now. But all these houses right here were all my uncles.
Mm-hmm.
There was 5 of them right here, and 2 more, one down here, one over here, blah, blah, blah. And I just hate to see the vegetation go and not being put back. Is one of the issues, but that comes with progress. The other things about the growth here is you've got marinas in here now that weren't, and they have really updated them in the last 2 years. Beautiful, nice marina. You've got the Hatteras Island Club that's been here for a number of years. A lot of people don't even know it's here. It's a private club. It's a nice club. Outstanding food. It brings a lot of people here. The Hatteras Island Tournament used to be an international tournament. And it got so big they couldn't handle it. And now they limited it to about 60 or 65 boats. And it's quite done a lot of money here. In this village, and of course what comes to this village spreads to the other villages.
Sure.
They had several people there, Mr. Jim Hackney, who passed away about 2 years ago now. He loved this village. He put a lot in here, and many others. And I'm using Jim because he's most recent, like Mr. Lyons. Mr. Lyons put a lot of money in this area, and Mr. Stellwagen and others. And you'll read about some of them, I think, in this book.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy that book. Well, I tell you what, I know you have a funeral to get to, and I don't want to keep you.
Would that help you any?
Yes, I'd love to talk to you further, but I know that this isn't a good time.
Well, we'll certainly, when you finish the book, just give me a buzz. We'll try to sit down again.
Sure.
And I apologize all these trips. Listen, I just had this room repainted because I've got junk in this room. I had stuff on the walls, and I'm not sure I want to put all this mess back up.
It looks beautiful. I noticed the fresh paint. I thought, wow, you really keep the place up nicely.
Well, I love the house.